Thank you for watching my video and checking out my channel. I appreciate your time, and I hope that I can show you something unique or interesting or give you some ideas that will inspire you. So if you are planning on doing any baking for Valentine's Day, I was just going to show you a quick idea that just adds a little extra to your baking if you're planning on making a cake or cupcakes for that matter. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with 2 cake mixes, one plain white and one chocolate. And all we're going to do is prepare them exactly as indicated on the box. So we'll just remove the packaging. I've already preset the oven to 325 degrees. So it's already preheated and ready to go. So these cake mixes are pretty standard, just calls for some milk or water, 3 eggs and some vegetable oil. So we're gonna prepare them exactly as per the instructions. And I'm not using my KitchenAid mixer today because I'm making 2 separate cakes. It's just as easy to put in some manual labor and actually stir them myself. I'm okay with that. So I'm just gonna crack 3 eggs into each bowl. And I'm going to do my best not to get any eggshell in there, but you never know. Okay, almost there. So as you can see, because I'm making 2 cake mixes, there'll be plenty for creating 2-layer cake as well as some extra for my cupcakes. Okay, and then we're gonna get a 1.25 cups of milk. So 1 cup is 250 mils. And then we have, this is actually a 1/2 cup, but I'm going to pour in 1/4 and 1/4. And then the recipe calls for a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. So we'll put that in. You could actually leave out the vegetable oil if it's not something that you want to add to your cake. It's not completely necessary. You could just compensate with a little bit more milk or water. Okay, so all we're gonna do is give these a good stir. You can see I now have my batter well incorporated for both cakes. And what we're going to do is just set the chocolate cake mix aside for a moment and grab a couple of bowls. So what I want you to do is divide the cake batter up into these 2 sets of bowls. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to add food coloring to these cakes in different colors. And you'll see what we're going to do once that's completed. Okay, so I have 2 different types of food coloring. This is liquid gel food coloring. I have super red, which doesn't always come out super red, but you get the point. And then I have fuchsia or pink. So I'm gonna put some food coloring into both bowls of the vanilla cake mix. And we'll see how these colors turn out. Obviously, you can color them as light or as dark as you want. Your own personal preference. Grab a couple of spoons, give it a stir, and see if it's the color that you were looking for. So this looks like it's going to turn a nice shade of pink, and I don't really think that I want to go any darker. on this color, so 3 to 4 drops of food coloring was definitely enough. So there's our pink. And then we'll stir up the red and see what that looks like. We just want to make sure that the two colors do not look the same or close to the same. We want them to be very distinct colors. So the red actually looks like it's coming out very nicely. There's definitely a big contrast between the two colors, which is exactly what I'm trying to achieve. I'm gonna go ahead and put a couple more drops of red just to make it a little bit deeper. And there we go. This is exactly the color that I was looking to achieve. Perfect. Okay, so now that we have our two different colors, pink and red, and then we have chocolate. So we don't need to do anything with the chocolate cake. The chocolate's gonna stay chocolate. The vanilla is red and pink. So we're gonna put that aside for a moment, and I'm gonna grab 2 cake pans. Now I always like to line my cake pans with parchment paper or wax paper. I was actually at Dollarama, the Looney store, and I came upon these pre-cut sheets of wax paper. Now these are for an 8.5 inch pan. My pans happen to be 8 inch, so I did have to put it under the pan and trim it out to cut to size, but it certainly made the job a little bit easier. But if you have 8.5 or 9 inch cake pans, these would fit perfectly. So I'm gonna spray a little bit of oil on my cake pans. Make sure you get all the corners and the bottom. These are non-stick, but I still like to put a little bit of oil just to make sure my cake comes out nicely. And I'm gonna put my wax paper on the bottom. Just get rid of any bubbles that might form at the bottom. Make sure it's laying nice and flat so that batter doesn't get underneath. And there you go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chocolate cake batter. Now when I'm filling up these pans, essentially you don't want to fill it up any more than halfway. Otherwise the cake will rise too much and possibly cook over the edges. We don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some chocolate cake into the center of the cake pan. And then I'm going to do that for the second layer with the second cake. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your pink or your red and you're going to pour a little bit of that into the center of your cake mix, of the chocolate. And go ahead and do the same for the next one. And then what you're going to do is take your next color, your red, and you're going to pour some of that into the center. And just let it spread out naturally on its own. You don't need to fuss with it. Okay. Then you can go back and add a little bit more chocolate. Again, pouring it into the center. And this is a great cake for people who like both chocolate and vanilla, because then they get the best of both worlds. I'm just gonna give it a little shake just to let the cake disperse to the edges. Perfect. And I'm actually going to put a little bit more chocolate. I was a little skimpy with this last layer, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And add a little bit more. And then I'm going to go back and add a little bit more pink. And a little bit more pink on this side. more red. And a little bit more red. Perfect. So now that my cake pans are filled halfway, just gonna give it a little jiggle, just to make sure it's all evened out. Okay, and there you have it. These cakes are ready to go into the oven at 325 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes, depending on your oven temperature. I always like to set it a few minutes less than what the box requires because I don't want to overcook the cake. There's nothing worse than a dry cake. So I'm gonna put these on the middle rack at 325 for 23 to 25 minutes. Check to make sure that they are done. Just press the center of the cake at the top, and if it just bounces back slightly, your cake is ready to be pulled from the oven. Always keep in mind that your cake will still cook a few more minutes after it comes out of the oven, so you don't want to maximize the cooking time and then have it cook even longer when it's sitting on the counter. So always remove it just a tiny bit before it is completely done. So here we go. I'm not going to color the icing because the colors in the cake are so pretty that I don't want to take away from that. So I'm choosing to leave the icing white for the cake. So what we're going to do is you can flip over the cake, and of course, because there is a little bit of a mound, I'm going to take my serrated blade and I'm just going to cut off the top just so that I get a nice level surface for stacking the two cakes. And as you can see on the inside, just how beautiful that cake turned out. So I'm going to set that on my cake plate. And then I'm going to do the same for the next cake. I hope this inspired you and made you realize that you can take just a simple basic cake mix and turn it into a complete work of art.